lived and worked in the east of England since the year 2000, and lived in Hertfordshire actually since the year 2002. So first of all I lived in Welling, and now I live in Hitchin, Harpen constituency, but I actually live in Stevenage. We're just that funny little bit at the top. I work in the pharmaceutical sector. I recently started a new job on Monday. So I'll be working with managers and doctors and nurses who deliver diabetes services in London. I was working for Roche in Welling Garden City and working on oncology and cancer services. And a couple of years ago I spent 2 years seconded into the NHS, working with the East of England Strategic Health Authority up in Cambridge. And what I did there was I worked on a project to improve access to contraceptive services. So in that role I worked and visited every single doctor's surgery, and I used to come here to London Colney as well, and I know some of the doctors here very well. And I used to work with all the hospital doctors as well on a project to improve access to contraception. We trained about 250 people across the region, and what that's meant is that teenage pregnancy rates and abortion rates have come down year on year since then. So I do know this region like the back of my hand. I've worked in it for a long, long time. I've got experience of elected office. I was elected at the age of 24. I'm nearly 36 now. To Wandsworth Council in London. I served as the Shadow Cabinet Member for Health, which I think would be quite clear to you now that the NHS and the health services is very dear to my heart. And regeneration and transport. Now I don't know if any of you actually know Battersea at all or know Chelsea Bridge, but there is a roundabout at the end of Chelsea Bridge just as you go into Battersea. And this is my claim to fame. This is something I did because you couldn't do a lot in a Tory administration. But there were no lines marking around the roundabout, so what that meant was there always used to be bottlenecks of traffic jams that used to go on for ages. And in one meeting one day I said, do you know, we could solve this, why can't we have some lines? So there are now lines around Queenstown Circus roundabout, that's down to me. And that's what I achieved in that time. I've also been a parliamentary candidate in the region. In 2007 I was selected to stand for Central Suffolk and North Ipswich. Yes, and a bastion of true blue land. But what that taught me actually, and that taught me a lot about the diversity of this region, you know, the urban and rural. I mean, I've always lived in the urban bits, and the urban bits are a bit like where I come from, so, you know. But going to the rural areas, what struck me is there is a lot of poverty there, there's a lot of deprivation, and quite frankly, a lot of the people that vote Tory really should be voting for us. So it was about how do you work with these communities and stand up for them. And one of the reasons I stood in an area like that with no reason to win was because I actually believe that everybody should have a Labour candidate to vote for and encourage people to vote, because actually, ironically, next year in the European elections, every vote's going to count, and it's the only election where every vote counts. It doesn't matter where you live. If you vote Labour, you could actually get a Labour representative. So that's what I did there. I'm an experienced campaigner. I've campaigned in every single election since 1997, both in London and the East of England. When I was a parliamentary candidate as well, I used to do 3 journeys a week at least, which was a 180-mile round trip every time, to go and work in Ipswich, Chris Moss constituency, so I was working the key seats. And I've been out canvassing even in St Albans actually in my time. I'm a communicator, and what I'm going to say is that this election isn't just about giving a prize to somebody because they say they've knocked on the most doors. We are actually selecting people that are going to go and be parliamentarians as well. And there are two sides to this job. Yes, great, we go and knock on doors, but as Chris was saying as well, there are 6 million people in the East of England that we have to represent. And that will mean going to Europe, negotiating and communicating, because whilst we will be working hopefully with our sister parties, they come from different countries and everybody's going to be representing their own views. And there, my job will be to build relationships, to negotiate and to compromise so we can bring back the best deal for the East of England. I also speak some French and some German, so I hope that that might help me a little bit. In terms of who I am, I was born and brought up in Yorkshire, which is why I'm going back up there again. I went to the local comprehensive school, and I was the first person in my family to go to university, and Helen and I actually are graduates of the same college. I went to King's College London and I studied human biology, and then I did a master's degree in gerontology, so I've got a keen interest on older people's rights as well. And in the light of ageing population, there's so much that we need to look at in terms of dementia care, retirement, other long-term care. There are all the things, and actually it's not just going to affect the UK, it's going to happen, it's happening across Europe. So that is something that I would definitely be speaking up about, because it is something dear to my heart, and it is linked to the fact that I was very close to my grandmother, who passed away last year. She had cancer, and that's why I'm going to do this walk tomorrow. And she always taught me that it was my civic responsibility to fight for the underdog, and that's probably why I'm sitting here and wanting to do this. My parents own a newsagents. My dad used to work in textiles, but his industry was absolutely destroyed in the 1980s because of what the Tories did to our country, and that's why he bought the shop, which means that from the age of 8 I've been delivering newspapers, and touch wood, I've never been bitten by a dog yet. It's always the silent ones that you have to watch out for, I think. My brother also faced, my younger brother, he's 10 years younger than me, he also faced a similar problem to my father. He went to university, graduated, he's got a degree in construction project management, and again, because of what the Tories have done to this country, he couldn't get a job either. So last year, a year ago, he opened a fish and chip shop. So if you're ever up in Yorkshire, let me know. And you go in, you'll probably get free fish and chips if you tell me know me. One of my sisters, my younger sister, she's a podiatrist in the NHS. And my other sister, she's actually looking to stand for Parliament for the Labour Party up in Yorkshire as well. So there'll be hopefully 2 sisters from the same family standing. In terms of the other things I do, I'm a member of Unite and community trade unions. And that's actually quite a difficult thing to do when you work in the private sector, but I think it's really important that we don't forget the private sector and what private employers are actually doing to some of us as well. Because without the private sector, the public sector can't exist, and without the public sector, the private sector can't exist. So we have to all be working together to fight against some of the nasty things that the Tories are doing to us. I'm currently vice chair of my parish council as well. I was chair last year. I'm a governor of a school in Hertfordshire as well. I used to be governor of 2 schools, but I've given up one to do all of this other stuff. And I'm also the trustee for Stevenage Community Trust as well. I'm involved in various community organisations, and I also make a point of having a life outside away from politics, and that's what I'll say is that I'm not a career politician. I've always had a full-time job. This is something I do on the side. And the reason I'm doing the European Parliament elections, and I haven't gone for anything, I made the decision actually in 2010 that I was going to stand for this election after a discussion I had with Richard Howitt. And the fact that I'm an internationalist, I'm the daughter of immigrants. My parents came here from Kenya and India. And if it wasn't for internationalism and wasn't for the tolerance that this country shows to people, I wouldn't be sitting here. And that is one of the reasons why I've actually chosen to stand for the European Parliament, because I think we need a greater voice in Europe. And we need a greater voice because that's the only way that the UK will get a future voice in the rest of the globe. And I think we need decent Labour MEPs there fighting, not the Tories, not UKIP, all those who, they don't actually go and represent us. They go there to take the expenses, but they're not giving us a voice. And I think Europe gives a lot of social freedoms, which I would be very, very upset to lose. So that's one of the reasons why I actually decided to stand.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Julia.
Well, the previous speaker said I was criticising the UKIP member because she mentioned his name. And then she said, "Do you know who he is?" And I said, "No." And I thought, I don't even know who my Labour EU member is. Most people don't even have the foggiest idea who represents them. You go out in the streets and nobody, I guarantee, will be able to say who their MEP is. Don't you think that that's a problem, really the problem? People don't know who represents them, and the distance is just too great for some people to take an interest in it.
to be honest, I think the European Parliament is quite far removed. But I think one of the problems is caused by the fact that we've got proportional representation system, and our bigger problem for us, for Labour in the east of England as well, is that there's only Richard Howitt, and I personally think he does an absolutely fantastic job. But this is a huge region. These 6 counties, it's the second biggest region actually in geography after the southwest. It's 6 million people. He cannot physically go and cover the whole region. I mean, he does his best to get on the media, and the more MEPs we get elected next year, the higher proportion of the vote we get, the better it will actually be, because we are all willing to connect with the general public, and it's about getting on the media. So if there's only one MEP and he's invited, he can't do everything. Whereas if there was 2, hopefully 3 of us, then we can split that load and maybe start engaging a little bit as well. But I think that engagement needs to start very, very early. Some people will say, don't engage with school children, etc. But when I stood for Parliament, I made a point of engaging from primary school upwards. It wasn't just for votes, it was about educating people about the democratic process. People died for the vote. And there are so many countries in the world where the people still don't have a vote. And that's why I see the duty of everybody that's involved in politics, from grassroots all the way to the top, that we have to engage people. And the reason why people don't know what's going on is because we don't engage.
I want to ask this question. I've asked it of someone else. In the light of the Tory party's stand on EU referendum, how should we in the Labour Party respond?
Okay, I think...
What's your opinion?
What's my opinion on the EU referendum? I personally think that at the moment we need to be careful about promising any sort of referendum, because at the moment people aren't actually aware of what the question is going to be. Is it going to be simply in and out, or this third David Cameron way? What are we going to lose, what are we going to gain? So at the moment I would say don't promise them anything. It is actually party policy not to promise anything. I don't believe personally that we should govern by referendum anyway, because we live in a democracy, we have a vote, we have a parliament, we elect people there. And the other thing that we need to be careful of as well is that if we were to promise something, and there is a very, very good chance that Ed Miliband will be Prime Minister in 2015, do we really want him to be remembered as the Prime Minister that took us out of Europe? Because it's going to be absolutely detrimental to the party and to the country. And what we need to be doing in the meantime is not promising anything on referendums, but actually talking about the positives of Europe, what Europe actually brings us, things like workers' rights, paternity rights, consumer rights, things that we can do with extradition, things like that, our voice in the global world. Those are the sort of things that we need to be talking about in a positive manner.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions?
Not a question, Chair. I would just like to say thank you very much. When you were speaking and your socialist principles came out, I was remembering my youth and why I am a member of the Labour Party.
Oh, thank you. I'm very humble. Thank you.
If you'd like to very briefly sum up.
Well, I just want to say that thank you very much for inviting us all actually tonight. We just wish that more places would have organised more of these meetings, because we were really keen on just coming meeting members, because that's the only way you're going to get to know us actually, and that is actually the first step to how do we all start engaging. Now hopefully whatever happens, wherever I get placed on the list, I will be out campaigning on the doorstep. I'll come to St Albans, be in Watford, and I'll be in the other 5 counties as well. So I just want to say thank you very much. And obviously Helen's got my contact details. You should have all received a leaflet from me in the post as well. So please don't hesitate in getting in touch if you've got any further questions or comments. But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.